everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Joli. And today we're going to be taking you through everything you need to know about Crassula Ovata, commonly known as jade plants, and how to resolve any issues you might currently have going on with them. Before we get started, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe to be kept up to date with any future videos me and Joli make. So there are quite a few varieties of jade plants, for example, the Gollum Jade. So any care tips I talk about in this video can also be applied to these. These ones tend to make amazing beginner plants because they're so low maintenance, they're really fast growing, and they're also really easy to propagate to make new little baby plants. This jade plant was one of many little ones that I propagated. There's actually quite a few ways that you can go about propagating them, so I'll talk about that more towards the end of the video. When it comes to light, jade plants are actually really quite adaptable, but in order to keep your plants full, bushy, green, happy, healthy, then you need to make sure it's receiving at least 6 hours a day of bright indirect light. You might have noticed that jade plants can actually come in quite a few colours, either kind of dark green. Oh, hello. Hi. No, not the plants. Oh, what are you doing? What I started to say was jade plants can actually come in a few different colours, either kind of dark green like this one, or a much lighter kind of pale green with red around the edges of the leaves. Both colours of jade plant can be healthy, however the more sunlight they receive, the more you'll start to notice the lighter green and red colours start to appear. Hence why if you grow jade plants outside, they're going to look a lot different to this. It's pretty simple. You can change its appearance simply by how much light you choose to give it. But as a houseplant, as I say, it's really important it's receiving at least 6 hours a day of bright and direct light. If you notice brown patches or spots appearing on the leaves, this can actually sometimes be because it's getting too much sunlight and it's causing the leaves to burn. I keep this jade plant on an east-facing window. A south-facing window. Oh my God. I always really struggle to say east-facing window, south-facing window. I don't know why I find that so hard. But I keep this jade plant by an east-facing window. There we go, got through it. I keep her on an east-facing window ledge and she's really, really happy there. The one thing you do have to just be aware of is that they chase the light quite quickly. So if you don't rotate them every so often, then they'll actually kind of grow towards it and start leaning. So I just tend to give her pot a little spin every few weeks or so. A really easy way to tell that your jade plant might not be getting enough light is that it starts to look quite stretched and leggy looking instead of kind of condensed and full and bushy looking. Also, a really important thing that you should be doing regularly is dusting and wiping down your plant's leaves. This goes for all of your plants, but particularly plants with kind of a rubbery texture because I don't know, it just seems to build up slightly more on them. But basically, if you've got a layer of dust there, it prevents your plant from absorbing all of the light they need in order to photosynthesize, grow healthily, and also it makes them much more prone to pests. I just use a microfiber cloth or a damp sponge and just wipe down both sides of the leaves whenever I can. When it comes to watering, although succulents are known for being really drought tolerant, and these ones definitely are, I've actually noticed that these ones, jade plants, prefer slightly more water than a lot of my other common succulents. I'll always wait until the top couple of inches of soil are completely dried out, and then I'll just lift her in her nursery pot out of the pretty white ceramic pot, give her a really good soak through, let her drain, and then pop her back into the pretty pot. Obviously, different types of houseplants are going to require different amounts of water, and that is kind of why I don't agree with like these plant watering apps that you can get nowadays that kind of say, it's been 12 days, you must water your plant now, because it's just so down to environmental factors. Like everybody's house is going to be a slightly different temperature, lighting is going to be slightly different, humidity is going to be different. So although I personally water this one probably about every 2 to 3 weeks, the most important thing is to just make sure that those top few inches of soil have completely dried out before you do. That might be every week for you, that might be every month. Just monitor the soil. Another really easy way to tell if your jade plant is ready for a drink yet, if you're not quite sure, is just by looking at the leaves. If they're kind of full and plump and succulent, then she's obviously holding a lot of water already. She's probably going to be all right if you don't water her for a little bit longer. But if the leaves are a lot flatter, thinner, not as plump, then chances are she is ready for a drink. As I say, these ones really don't like to be sat in soggy soil. It can cause things like root rot, it can cause the stem to start rotting away. So always make sure that those top few inches of soil have had enough time to dry out before you jump in and water again. You can use a moisture meter to help you tell when you should or shouldn't water. I personally don't really use them. I just stick my finger down to the soil and feel, but yes, moisture meters are an option. As I've already mentioned with these ones, drainage is key. So firstly, making sure you use a really well draining soil, but also if you've got a pot like this one that doesn't actually have a drainage hole on it, then leaving your plant in its nursery pot inside like that, so that you can actually take it out to water it, let it properly drain, and then pop it back into the pretty pot. This is particularly important if you keep your jade plant outside, which I know a lot of people do, just because if it doesn't have good drainage, then rainwater is essentially going to just flood the pot, meaning that your plant will either drown or will be much more susceptible to things like root rot and stem rot. If you know that you're particularly prone to overwatering, then using terracotta pots can actually be a really brilliant way to regulate this, just because terracotta is a breathable material and it essentially absorbs a lot of the moisture from the soil. Some houseplants can be really fussy about the type of water that you give them. Calatheas, for example, can be really sensitive to the chemicals and minerals in tap water. Touch wood with these ones, they are really hardy and resilient plants. So if you live somewhere like a town or something like that with much harder water, they're still likely to do well. If you notice your jade plant's looking slightly floppy or it's dropping leaves fairly regularly, then this is almost always down to a watering imbalance, meaning you've either given it way too much at some point or not enough. If the soil's not saturated with water and it's not immediately obvious whether or not you've under or overwatered, then I would recommend checking the stem of your plant and also the roots of your plant. Healthy roots should be full and pale, and unhealthy roots tend to be darker and more shriveled looking. I've talked before about ways that you can go about treating root rot, so I will post that in the description box below. During the growing season, fertilising your jade plant is really important to help encourage and support new growth. I fertilise mine with a gentle, natural diluted fertiliser more or less every other time I water during growing season. I have also made a video about how you can actually make your own houseplant fertiliser, so I'll link that above. I've said this in most of my other plant care videos as well, but it's really important to remember that fertilising your plant on a regular basis outside of the growing season can actually do it a lot more harm than good. Because your plants aren't growing as quickly and therefore won't require as many extra nutrients, adding fertiliser into the equation can actually send them into shock, it can stunt their growth and cause something called fertiliser burn. So yes, I recommend just sticking to the spring and summer months. I hope you can still hear me all right. It's just started to rain and it's really loud. Jade plants have such a wide range of temperatures they can tolerate. As I said, some people even choose to grow them outside. As house plants, it's recommended to keep them between 14 and 28 degrees Celsius. But at my old place, we actually had a big one that lived outside all year round. And here in the UK, the temperature obviously fluctuates quite dramatically, and it was absolutely fine. Obviously, if it's kept in lower temperatures over a longer period of time, its growth rate is going to be significantly reduced, but as I say, they're pretty hardy plants. Jade plants naturally grow in quite dry climates, so tend to prefer lower humidity levels. About 30 to 50% is usually ideal for them, which can be quite standard for a lot of homes. For that reason as well, misting your jade plant really isn't a good idea, just because it can lead to issues such as rotting or mildew. Those little white spots that you sometimes see in the pores of your jade plant can actually be caused by mildew or fungal disease, which goes hand in hand with too much humidity. It can also be caused by pests, so as I've said before, it's really important to check your plants for pests on a regular basis and isolate them if you suspect anything might not be quite right. I've briefly talked about pest prevention and treatments in another video, but I'm also currently planning some more specific videos on pest treatment, so stay tuned. As I mentioned at the start of this video, these plants are also really easy to propagate. In my opinion, the easiest and quickest way to do this, and how I actually grew this one, because this one was only about that big when I started it, is just to take a tiny little branch cutting with maybe maximum 4 or 5 leaves and just plant the stem directly into a well-draining soil. You just need to make sure that you plant it at least an inch or 2 into the soil so that it's really secure. Give it a good water, place it in an area that receives really good light, and just try not to move it around too much for a few months, just so that you don't disrupt and damage the rooting process. Another really easy way to propagate jade plants is taking a similar small branch cutting, again with no more than about 4 or 5 leaves, and popping it into water to propagate. I've personally never had any issues just planting my cuttings directly into soil, but if you want to make sure that the roots are kind of fully formed first, then this is a really great way to do it. Once you can see the roots are a few inches long, you can go ahead and pot up your cutting in a well-draining soil. Again, just be careful not to move the pot around too much for the first couple of months so that your roots have time to kind of grip on and adjust to their new environment. Some people like to use rooting hormone to kind of help speed the process up a bit. With these ones, I've always had a really high success rate without it, so I don't tend to bother, but you can do that if you want to. You can also propagate jade plants just from a single leaf cutting. This again is really easy to do, and the most effective way I've found is just planting that leaf cutting directly into damp soil. You can also just lay the leaf flat on top of some damp soil. You don't actually have to plant it, and just mist it regularly to avoid the soil drying out. This way is really clever and amazing to watch because the leaf will essentially root itself. If anyone's got any questions or wants to know about something that I didn't cover in this video, then feel free to let me know in the comments section below and I will do my best to help. I really hope you found this video useful. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video.